Hi listeners of the You've Got to Be Kidding Me podcast. It is Sarah Flannery here, otherwise known as Sarah Flann, and I was delighted to be invited to talk about TNA in the wake of its 20th anniversary. I can't believe that it's been 20 years. They got it, they made it 20 years when they had their critics and their doubters who would have thought they went out of business. And to be honest, there have been several occasions where we all probably thought they were going to go out of business, but they made it through and they survived, and consider them to be thriving with some of the talent and relationships that they've developed that we never thought that they'd ever get again after some of the disasters a few years ago. But really, no, honestly and truly, TNA/Impact has been instrumental for me as a wrestling fan. If we go back to 2008, 2009, I was a very young teenager, 13, 14 years old, and I discovered TNA through watching it on television. It was aired here in Dublin, Ireland, where I'm from. And I was just absolutely captivated because it was the first time I'd ever been really properly exposed to wrestling that maybe wasn't WWE. And I couldn't really believe my eyes, some of the talent that I was seeing, especially I think for my age and a lot of the people in my generation. The X Division was kind of that crucial thing that got us hooked. And especially for me, it was the Motor City Machine Guns, Alex Shelley, and especially Chris Sabin. You know, you tuned in to see all these big stars, but I stayed for the Motor City Machine Guns, who at the time, we were all like, why aren't they getting pushed as a tag team? You know, they kind of went singles, and Alex Shelley had his run after Chris Sabin dominated the X Division, in my opinion, for a lot of years, but they never got that run as a tag team until a few years later. They really were instrumental for me because of tuning in to see them every week. That really introduced me to so many other wrestling companies because I wanted to get my hands on anything that Chris Sabin was in. And I really have TNA to thank for that. And I don't think a lot of people give TNA enough credit for even introducing them to, say, some Japanese wrestling. I mean, their relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling, I mean, it did go sour at the time, maybe because of how they treated some of the talent, but you know, the first time I ever watched a big Japanese wrestling show was a Wrestle Kingdom 3. And that was really instrumental in me getting into New Japan. Finding out who Tanahashi was, you know, Tanahashi showing up on TNA television, like that was huge. And I remember actually watching that at the time being like, wow, this guy is good. And then him having to go back to Japan like soon after that. You know, I'm kind of moving on from that. Getting into TNA, it was at the time, it was really getting big in Europe. And we were very fortunate that TNA actually came over here to do some live shows starting in 2009 in our national stadium. And I was fortunate enough that I got to go. And it was unlike any show that I'd ever been to before. I mean, I'd been to WWE house shows here, but you always knew that they phoned it in on those tours, whereas TNA felt completely different. You know, they had table spots, they had moves on the outside, like they really felt like they were giving it all for the crowd. Now, I do hold a grudge against Jeremy Borash because I was certainly one of the loudest fans and I should have been able to go backstage to meet all my favourite wrestlers, but I digress. And even later that year, they went to the kind of the bigger arena in Dublin at the time, the Point, now called the 3 Arena, and like they didn't pack the crowd, and there was always the rumours that, you know, the show might get cancelled or be downgraded, but I was so happy to see them in such a big venue, to be honest. I felt like they deserved to fill that venue. It just felt very special because TNA meant so much to me at the time. I don't know if I'd be such a massive wrestling fan the way I am now if it wasn't for TNA. Because I was that kind of misunderstood kid who kind of strayed from the norm, strayed from what my friends were into, and, you know, I kind of found a happy place in TNA. Back in 2009, if you followed me on Twitter, when I started my Twitter account, you know, my username was MMG Sarah. Forgot the C and Motor City Machine Guns, but sure, look, I was only young. You can't really give out to me for that, and I didn't figure out how to change it for a very long time. And yeah, I got to see them several times. They came over to Ireland several times to the National Stadium. And, you know, getting to see Chris Sabin finally wrestle, because he wasn't on the first few tours through injury, or he just wasn't on the card, because at the time, when they first came out in 2009, Alex Shelley was the X Division champion, and then just after Genesis, when they had that singles match, which is absolutely incredible, and everyone should always go and watch that at least once a year, because it really showcases their talent. You know, getting to see even younger talent come through. I remember watching the British boot camp. And do you remember Rockstar Spud? And, you know, he was such a massive star, I thought, and, you know, TNA were the ones who found him. Then, of course, he went on to do, you know, stuff in WWE years later. But really, you know, his best stuff, I think, was in TNA. So yeah, that's kind of my ramblings on how much I love TNA. And like I said, I hope there's another 20 years of TNA, because I think they're very, very important. And they're now a pillar of wrestling. And I don't think the scene would be the same without them. The opportunities they've given to some of the top names in the business over the years, it wouldn't be the same. Especially looking back, there were some really good times, some really, really good times. And I think there was at one point it was challenging as being one of the best wrestling promotions in the world with some of the talent that they had. And if it wasn't for them, so many of us wouldn't have discovered our favourite wrestlers, and so many of our favourite wrestlers wouldn't have gone on to do such amazing things in this business. So I really think we have them to thank. And I just want to sign off. Curryman should have gotten a Fired Championship title shot that time he won the Fired case in the Feast or Fired match. And that's all I have to say. Thanks again, guys, for inviting me on. If you want to follow me on Twitter, follow me at Sarah Flann. If you want to listen to me ramble about other wrestling, I have on a podcast called Journey Through Gorilla Island with 3 of my best friends. So go check us out on there. We discuss early days PWG. Thanks, everyone.